conference that I've spoken at here, the social media conference, Social Fresh. That's a lot. It's evolved quite a bit since that first time I took the stage. At that point, I was trying to tell people about, there's this thing, it's called Radian6, and you can do monitoring and listening. It's really sick. Everybody's like, I don't know, that's really weird. Well, then life kept going, and the nature of how you actually did social marketing continued to evolve, and those practices are still very important. That's why we're hearing lots of great best practices that we see out of those. And I've now sold my soul, and I'm on the paid media side. Who else here is with me? Anybody doing paid media and social? Anybody want to do paid media? You wish you had some budget? And hoping to eventually get there and would think these tips are going to be rad? All right, I got some hands. That's not bad. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the news feed. And I don't just mean Facebook, although we will primarily focus on it. But Twitter is in this space as well. LinkedIn is in this space as well. This is quickly emerging as a very important advertising channel. And we need to be able to understand what works in the space, especially since we've had so many years of being told not to be too brand forward and to make sure that we're transparent, authentic. A lot of those rules don't apply when it starts coming to money, because we're not trying to get viral traffic, we're trying to convert traffic. Very different game. So let's talk about what converts in the newsfeed. And before we talk about that, of course we have to be able to talk about this fundamental concept, which is the difference between desktop and mobile. And for so many years, I'm like, oh yeah, mobile. I know it's going to be a big deal. I'll worry about it when it's a big deal. Well, it's a big deal now. If you haven't paid attention to some of the metrics, 71% of Facebook's traffic is now coming through mobile, and they have a substantial portion, 219 million people that are mobile only. Similar trend going on with Twitter. Twitter's been very mobile-centric for a very long time. But the other thing that we're noticing is when we start to look at the landing experiences that we put out there, and yes, you have to use landing pages because likes, comments, they don't actually equal business value unless you're trying to do branding. But if you're actually trying to do conversion or you're trying to drive lead gen or anything like that, you need to be able to provide some sort of experience beyond just the native platform. And what we're seeing is that 51% of the engagement that we're getting is from mobile. So it's no longer like, I'm going to do my desktop strategy, and then if I have time, I'll get around to that mobile thing. It's a nice thing to add. It's actually the other way around. I would challenge you all now to shift 100% of your budget into the mobile space and justify why you need to spend any of it on desktop. It is that big of a trend. It's no longer coming. It is here. The other thing that I said in a very depressing manner earlier and at previous Social Fresh conferences is this change in tactic. I'm saying social marketing 2.0. You could argue that it's 3, maybe even 4.0, if you consider the care portion of what we did in the initial days of social marketing to be 1.0. But there was this period of time where we started realizing, oh gosh, we're going to need more than just viral and organic reach. We're also going to need to be able to convert these people into some sort of monetizable business value. So we started doing that process on the desktop side. And I don't know if you guys remember when I used to work at WebTrend Social, it was very much all about, we're going to put out tab applications, we're going to put ads on the right-hand rail, and we're going to drive that to these landing experiences. But these tactics have now evolved. So, using the 1.0, 2.0 model that we got from O'Reilly back in the original Web 2.0 days, 1.0 was all about desktop, 2.0 is all about mobile. 1.0 was all about getting ads in the right-hand rail. 2.0 is all about getting into the news feed. 1.0 was all about, I have a centralized web presence and I need to create a hierarchical experience and make it so that people can navigate it. 2.0 says, I really don't care about people navigating it because they're not going to get to my experience until they see something in the news feed. So it's a decentralized experience. 1.0 was all about tab applications and canvas applications or even your own website. 2.0 is all about what we call social optimized landing pages. And if you haven't heard that term, or if you have, you've probably heard about that as like, make it something people can talk about. That's that viral traffic game. That's not what I mean, and I'll explain in a bit. It was also, like I said, a lot about viral. So it was all about like, how am I going to get traffic for free? 2.0 says, I got a lot of money. How am I going to make it work for me? So these are tactics you need to be aware of. 1.0 was all about, we got to get fans. 2.0 says we have to have customers. 1.0 is, I need engagement. 2.0 says, I need conversions. This is a big shift. So let's talk about the tactics and how this plays out. And in particular, I want to talk about social optimized landing pages. This is something that you should have all seen by now if you're using things like Facebook. But every social app that is out there today allows you to be able to call up a browser from within the native app. That means that you get this experience where somebody sees a giant link post like this, they click on it, it slides over in the feed, and now you have a web page. So what is a social optimized landing page? Well, number one, for obvious reasons, it has to be optimized for the mobile form factor. Now, the one mistake that people make when they think about that is like, oh, I just need a mobile-friendly web page. No, that's not enough. That's the start. The second aspect of it is that you're going to end up with native integrations, which we'll go into in a moment, that are not part of your standard mobile pages. And you have to think about the type of experience. What most people do when they make a mobile style sheet for their website is they say, I need a style sheet that takes all the exact same content that I have on my desktop experience, and now I need to make it into a mobile-friendly version of it. And they sacrifice none of the experience. That's not optimized for social. So we'll talk about that. Social optimized landing pages. What are the advantages of this approach? See if my little animation works. Ooh, huh? Huh? The motion? Oh, I'm so stoked about that. As I was saying, these things are HTML5. You want to be able to use responsive design because it's going to show up on either the desktop experience or the mobile experience, so you need it to be able to do that. Of course, you want fast loading times because obviously that's something that if somebody's sitting around waiting for your page to load, you're going to have a lot more drop-off. But you also need native integration, so you need to be able to do certain things that standard websites don't necessarily do, like using Facebook's conversion spec. If you have ads and you want conversion data, Facebook has no idea what happens outside of Facebook.com. So you have to be able to place their conversion pixel into your landing experience so that that conversion that occurs can show up in their data. So your ad buying team can actually optimize against conversion events. You also need to be able to leverage certain things like open graph actions, or hover cards, or Twitter cards, different types of native integrations that have unique requirements that standard websites don't necessarily utilize. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You also need to have integrated analytics. This is something that most people mess up. And you'll mess it up for a couple of reasons. Number one, very few people actually have properly set up mobile analytics. For example, iOS, which still drives the majority of web pages that are viewed in mobile, blocks third-party cookies by default. Well, all of your standard analytics solutions all use third-party cookies. And if you're not familiar with that term, ultimately it has to do with whether or not the cookie is being set by the website you're on, or it's coming from another source like Omniture or Google or something like that. Those cookies don't work in mobile. So you need to make sure that you not only have analytics on all of your campaigns, it has to actually work in mobile. You also need to be able to see a combined view of this data. So you don't just want, I've got my landing page data and I've got my Facebook or Twitter data. You need to be able to see a holistic campaign, and how are you going to actually bring all that together? And this one actually, the final bullet point showed to my marketing manager. She said, I have no idea what that means. So bear with me when I try to explain this point. You need to be able to have a one-to-one-to-one relationship between the messaging that is in your ad, your post, and your landing page. And what most people end up doing is they have one team over here who makes the landing pages or manages the .com. They have another team over here who is responsible for actually posting onto the social networks. And then another team that does all kinds of media, including social. And nary the twain shall meet. So you end up with all kinds of odd, you click on a post and you get to a landing page and you're like, what does this have to do with what I just saw? Well, you may not know that either they had no choice and they just had to link to what they had, or it might be something that they literally made a change to the product description page right as the campaign was going on because somebody wanted to optimize it and now it broke the messaging. Or you have an offer that's part of your messaging, but it's buried somewhere on the page and it's really hard to find. So it's really important that when you are creating landing pages, that you are making one for every post. That's hard to do. You need to be able to do that, though. That's the only way you're going to get everything wired together. And at the end of the day, you can use these for a spectrum of outcomes. And I don't want you to just believe me. At the end of the presentation, I'm going to show you some very impressive data in terms of the performance that we're seeing out of these. But yes, you can use them anywhere from what we typically think about social, which is top of the funnel activity, being able to create amplification, aggregation, buzz, awareness. But you can also use it for the other side of the funnel, the bottom of the funnel, right? Which is lead generation, actually driving purchases, being able to do the types of conversion activities that makes everybody go, oh, that's really working well. Let's just shovel more money into this. This is awesome. You need to be able to tell that story. And you can do that entire spectrum here. So let's talk about what works, because this is what it really comes down to, right? This is my awesome molecule graphic. Yes, I made this. So if you're taking pictures, make sure you credit the amazing artistic skills here. But the core pieces that I basically am telling people that you need to be able to have in place in order to be able to do this type of thing is you do need that social post. And since what we're talking about here is being in the news feed, it's not like the right-hand rail ads, where you could upload your own image and your own text, and that's it. The post is the ad. So if you have a team over here who's responsible for posting, and a team over here who's responsible for doing media, you need to be able to bridge that gap. Because I see this all the time where the person who's the community manager is responsible for the page is like, I don't want to tweet that. I'm not putting that on my Facebook page. That's way too markety, way too salesy. That's not going up. Well, you need to understand that these all work together. So if you don't have agreement there, you're going to have a problem. That's when we start explaining, oh, don't worry, there's this thing called unpublished posts. We can put it out there. It's not going to show up on your pretty timeline and ruin your sense of social. And that helps people, right? But you need to be able to know that these are integral components. If you only have one aspect of this animal, you don't have control over the entire campaign. And that's not good. Then, of course, you need to be able to have the social optimized landing pages because that's the only place that conversions can take place. Conversions being something, like I said, more than a retweet or a like. You actually need somebody to be able to fill out a lead gen form or add to cart or be able to watch a movie all the way to the end or find tickets into showtimes. Like, these are the types of events that you need people to do if you're actually going to monetize. And then, of course, the final component of that is your social ads, which are the content from your post, but you can choose their own targeting and you can do all kinds of interesting optimization things with those that does make them a separate element. And you need those all to work as a single 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. Now, that's not exactly true because you can have multiple ads that point to those social posts and the landing pages, but you generally get the idea there. The other piece you need, of course, is that analytics. If you don't have analytics wired throughout this whole piece, you will not be able to see the performance, and therefore you will not be able to do any kind of optimization. I know that might seem like a weird point to make, but I am surprised today how many times we want to be able to do something like, oh great, we're going to do an ad, let's get a conversion pixel in place, and you end up in IT jail. No, we're not putting Facebook JavaScript on our buy flow, are you kidding me? No way. That's really important though, that you have to figure out a way to be able to overcome that. All right, so let's talk about some of these components and some of the fun data that we've looked at here. So this was a study of about 2,200 posts over a 6-month period that was roughly about 2.5 billion impressions worth of data. And one of the things we wanted to look at, of course, is the difference between the types of posts that you choose when you are doing paid efforts versus the types of posts that you choose when you're doing unpaid efforts. As you can see on the right side, and there is viral traffic on every one of those bars, you just can't see it. Because in the world of unpaid Facebook, viral doesn't matter. What? That guy just said something sacrilegious. Yeah, if you're not paying for any kind of distribution, viral traffic shows up so infinitesimally small as to not be there. And if you are trying to get reach, the only post you should be doing is a status post. How many people crank out status posts as their top post on their page? Yeah, no one, right? We're all posting photo posts because somebody told us a long time ago that was the one that got the most engagement, right? Well, that might be true, but it's not getting you the most reach on average, and it's usually 6 times less. That's crazy. So the other thing I did here is I overlaid the click-through rate. And I didn't just use Facebook's definition of click-through rate, because what they define as click-through rate is if you click on anything, including hide this as spam. Well, that's not what I'm trying to get here. I'm trying to actually get somebody to go from that post to my landing page. So mine is what they would call a link click rate. So I do use click-through rate, but just so you know, that's not the Facebook definition of click-through rate. And that's another problem that we see is people will be like, oh, well, I see my photo post over here is getting the best click-through rate. I'm going to continue to spend money on that. Well, wait a minute. Our objective is to actually get people to go to our conversion page and convert. And I can find other posts that are actually going to get better click-through rates that will actually drive more end results, even if the engagement rate of my photo post is higher. Now, what you do see is once you start paying for traffic, the posts that normally get no organic and viral reach suddenly start getting organic and viral reach. And in particular, questions, I believe, are deprecated, so sorry to get you excited about that awesome long bar. But videos and offers and photos and links actually get more organic and viral traffic if you are paying to sponsor them. So you get a bonus amount of traffic that lowers your effective cost per whatever you're doing, because you're getting more free media, right? So if you're paying for a certain portion of paid media, but you get extra bonus free traffic on top of that, then you actually get more than you paid for. That's a term that they refer to as effective CPM or effective cost per conversion or whatever. Effective is your adjusted. I goosed my denominator because I added in all this free traffic I got. It's a great tactic. Okay, so let's talk about outside of the post. That was just a little bit of insight to help you understand what goes on in the world of posts. Let's talk about what happens when people get to the landing page. So when people get to the landing page, this is a study from our campaigns, the link open rate on average is 0.3%. Now remember, this is not the same as what Facebook defines as click-through rate. This is the amount of people that are actually clicking on a link going from that post over to our campaign. The reason I like to share this data is because if you're used to something like, let's say, search advertising, you might look at 0.3% and go, God, I'm doing terrible. But in the world of social, that's awesome. And believe me, this is way better than we were when we were in the right-hand rail business, where our average click-through rate was 0.05%. This is like leaps and bounds ahead. I remember at the time talking, if they could just get it to be like 10x higher, that would be so amazing. That's like 0.5%, you know? So these are actually pretty decent rates in the world of social. The other thing to know about is what we call the consideration rate. This is something that I encourage all of you to start using in your campaigns, because even when you're trying to drive conversions, you're trying to drive a transaction, or you're trying to drive somebody to download a white paper, you're always being asked to do something else. It's never like, yeah, literally just put that button to download on there. It's always like, oh, and we also want to include our YouTube video. Oh, and we also want to like get a link back to our website. And oh, we want to get all this other stuff that also has value but isn't necessarily the conversion event. We call that the consideration event. Because it is something, you know, they're not just engaging by like hitting mute or scrolling on a scroll bar. They're actually doing something, consuming your content and actually building purchase intent. So make sure that you include consideration rate. And the reason that it is over 100% is because you're basically saying for every person who sees one of these pages, they generally interact with 2 things, which is another thing to keep in mind. How many items you should be putting on your page. If you're putting an entire product description page, that's too much for social. You need to be able to have a much more pared down initial landing page that is not giving somebody more than 3 to 5 things to engage with. Otherwise, you're doing what we call hiding the banana from the monkey. Not good. Can't remember where I heard that. I say it all the time, though. Conversion rate. This is something that's also important. We have an average conversion rate of 4.4%. Say, what? That's a huge number from social campaigns. You're stoked if you get 4.4% no matter what campaign you do, on average. I mean, don't get me wrong. We have campaigns that are massively higher than that, and we have some that are lower than that. But that's our average. That starts to make you think, wow, hold on. How much money am I spending on display? What's my click-through rate and conversion rate? How much money am I spending on social? And what's my click-through rate and conversion rate? How much am I spending on search? And what's my click-through rate and conversion rate? These numbers are so competitive that we're having a hard time finding cheaper digital channels at all. Because the cost of media on things like Facebook and Twitter is still so cheap by comparison to established channels like a Google. Very impressive numbers. This one I shared already, but just to re-emphasize this point, the amount of total engagement that occurs on our pages, 51.4% is coming from mobile. So the first thing we design is the mobile experience. We do not start with a desktop experience and then, it's like if you're a vegetarian, there's nothing more annoying than going to like a meatitarian restaurant and it's just like, we'll pull the meat off, that's your meal? What? No way. I want something that's actually designed for me from the beginning, and that's the same thing with mobile. We still see tons of people thinking that mobile is this bonus nice to have that can add some additional traffic, and that's not the case. So you need to start by actually designing your experiences to be mobile first. Okay, let's talk about some example campaigns because I think it really helps bring it all together. So this is an example of a campaign that we did where we were trying to get people to order pay-per-view. That's a $60 purchase. How many of you have actually purchased a pay-per-view event? Yeah, that's actually not bad. It's generally something that is more niche, for the standard person who's watching cable television or DirecTV or something like that. But with this campaign, we were able to get a 0.8% click-through rate, nearly 1%. This was with 6.1 million impressions, right? So it's not like, oh, we just had like a really tiny campaign and we were able to get some impressive numbers out of it because nobody really saw it. And in that process, we were actually able to get a 12% conversion rate as a campaign average, which means we actually had some that were like 23% on that post. That's insanely high. It's not too hard to get people to watch a couple of videos and then go, you know what, that's a fight I want to see. And if you have correct targeting, then you can get some really impressive results here. And the way that our team works with this division within Comcast is they are responsible for delivering people into the buy flow. They're not responsible for what happens after that. They have a budget that says, get people here who are qualified. And then there's another team who's responsible from that point. So they had figured out what their cost per acquisition was to deliver people into that buy flow. And this first campaign cut it by 42%. And I think literally from the time that we talked about it till the time that it was live was 1 week. So we're like, oh, now imagine if we actually put some really good ideas to play here and tried to optimize this. We're going to get much better results, and naturally we are. Bowflex, a product that's a multi-$1,000 purchase, the tread climber, right? I don't know if it's multi-thousand, but it's certainly a lot. And this one is one where we're trying to do lead generation. So we were trying to get people to say, I'm interested in this product so that they can have their sales team come and harass you later. That's how lead gen goes. We were getting, off of a 5.1 million impression campaign, very meaningful amount of traffic, about a 10% conversion rate. We were also getting, as compared to their standard video views, we got 14 times the average number of video views that they used to get. So remember, when we're talking about the ROI for this campaign, we are not talking about it just in terms of cost per acquisition. That's a mistake. That's the bottom line that they care about. But we are also able to say, and you're getting all this video views, and you're getting all this other stuff. So the total net value that we delivered is that complete package. It's all those consideration actions in addition to the conversion actions. And the overall effective click-through rate on this one is about a 1% click-through rate, which is incredibly high. Another one with a movie premiere that we did, this one was about trying to get people to actually get tickets and showtimes. And again, this is a buy flow handoff, right? So this is going over to Fandango, where you actually make the purchase. And this is hard because in mobile, we hate clicking buttons. We hate having to put too much energy into things. And there's two simple things that you need to be able to do before you can see tickets and showtimes. You need to tell them what movie I'm interested in and where am I. Well, what is mobile really awesome at? Location, right? So we were able to use the fact that we know we're targeting you for this movie, so all you had to do is one button click on showtimes and tickets, and it takes you right into the heart of the buy flow. And that is a very common pattern that we use, right? Which is being able to get people to do what we call the first step. It's something that I think people have talked about for a long time, broadly. I don't think it's just a niche little thing that I know, but generally trying to get people, when you're completing a conversion form, ask them for like one piece of data, like their email address, they enter it, boom, now you go to another set of fields. But because you've made that one step and now you're on step 2 of blah, conversion rates go way up. It's the same thing on here, and that's why you don't want to just link to your product description page, where it's going to end up cluttering it with all kinds of stuff that higher paid people told you to make sure to put on that page. Got to make sure it's focused. In that process, we had a 3.48% click-through rate, which is insane. Again, we doubled their average engagement rate, and we had about 30% more video views, which is hard to do for a movie studio. So these things really work. I'm not just telling you to do these tactics. We're showing multiple examples here. I'll give you another one that's a little bit smaller. Actually, this is the wrong image. I don't know why that is. Oh, hey. I think that's an accident. That's the correct image. So this is Bloomberg Radio. They were launching a channel in Boston, and they wanted to be able to get email signups. And I think we had like, I want to say like a $2,000 budget or something. It was, substantially smaller than a lot of the big brand examples I'm showing you, and I want you to see that so that you can actually get started with doing this on very affordable budgets. And what they were hoping to be able to do was to get some email addresses. We got 9 times more email addresses than they actually originally thought. And again, very high click-through rate. But this one, because it's a contest, had like over 50% conversion rate. It's really easy to get people to sign up for free stuff, as we'd heard earlier. So those are some examples. Hopefully this has been very insightful in ways of thinking about how conversion works in the news feed, how it's evolved over time. And I believe we are ready to do questions. Is that right? How far over did I go? We did good, huh?
Jason loves you. He said you could keep going for a little bit, but if you want to do some questions, we can. All right.
Awesome.
Who has some questions for Justin here? Jason does in the back.
Throw me a softball, Jason.
Okay, so I love listening to you speak. You're one of my favorite speakers, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
A lot of what you talk about is very high level, and it's advanced, which I love. So let's bring it down like a notch. Like, what's the first step people that aren't doing any paid Facebook could do to kind of start approaching this type of kind of advanced stuff?
Yes, how do you get started? Well, at the end of the day, you're going to have to start with spending some money somewhere. A good way to get started is obviously to target your fans. If you've already built a fan presence, that's amazing how many people skip this step. They'll start by choosing, like, I'm going to choose interests, I'm going to do this. Actually, first, just target your fans. Don't use any additional targeting, and start to see if you can get them to click through on links to landing pages. See if you're able to get the right kind of post content out there, and pick some things that are really easy for you. Like if you have a product with an offering where you can offer like 50% off or something ridiculous, like make it easy on yourself to be able to get conversions on the first one. Beyond that, the other thing to consider is working with custom audience targets. Custom audiences are the ability for you to be able to upload a list of email addresses, phone numbers, or if you have a Facebook application, you can also use actual Facebook IDs. But everybody pretty much has like an email newsletter, or they have a customer database or something like that. And again, just to make it easy on yourself, start by targeting people who are existing customers or existing subscribers to other materials that you have, and try and get them to start clicking through. Once you start seeing that you're getting sufficient click-through rates, then start working on the actual landing page experience and see if you can optimize it from there. So hopefully that's helpful.
Hey, you talked a lot about making sure that the people that are creating things for mobile, the content, the ads themselves are all connected. I was wondering what your thoughts are on connecting with the actual sales teams that end up receiving leads and conversions are, and if you do anything to signify to them that somebody has come in as a social lead, and if that helps them actually convert the person better, or if they just treat it the same way as any other general marketing lead from a traditional source?
Yeah, no, it's a great one. And there's two ways of sort of thinking about that. One, we actually have a lot of people who like to use click to call, which is basically just a standard link, with a phone number on it, and you just track from a conversion perspective how often that happens. But the actual calling process gets them right on the phone with sales, and they use a unique phone number. That way they can easily track how much value was I getting, and when that number rings, you can tell right away this is coming from those campaigns. And what's generally a good idea is before you launch your campaign, believe me, I've done this many times where in the marketing department I did it after, and sales is getting a bunch of inbound calls saying, what is this? But before you launch your campaign, it's good to send out to the sales team, hey, we're doing this campaign, it launches on this date, this is the creative for it, because there's nothing worse than when somebody calls and the salesperson doesn't know what they're referring to. So definitely make sure that you send that kind of stuff out ahead of time. And I've also found, now that I've actually had to wear a bit of a sales hat in this role, which is the first time ever in my career, I've always supported sales calls as a subject matter expert, but never had to be responsible for it. Getting people who have downloaded a white paper and trying to get them to buy is really, really hard. I know everybody gets very excited about that moment as a marketer because you're like, ooh, I delivered so many leads. They're like the worst leads ever. And I don't mean that to be offensive, right? But you want to make sure that you're getting people who have multiple touches. So if you have a sales team where you're using things like Salesforce or a CRM, it's generally a good idea to make sure that you let people know. We use a system called Acton. There's all kinds of different ones that do it. But give them a sense of past interaction history so they end up with some sort of a score. And instead of just going after and calling everybody who attended your webinar, try and find people who've attended a webinar, also checked out your web page, and downloaded one of your white papers. Those are going to be much more responsive people. Hopefully that's helpful.
All right, we have time for one more question for Justin. Come on, this guy's smart. Let's pick his brain.
Okay. I'd like to understand something that you said. When you promote a post on Facebook, Facebook gives you two separate set of data in the analytics that's attached to the ad for clicks. One is click on the ad, the other one is click on the link that was on the ad.
Yeah.
Do I understand correctly that click on the links in the ad is not click-through rate?
Correct.
What is it then?
Click-through rate is any engagement that occurred with the unit. So every unit has the ability, if it's a post initially, you can like it, you can comment on it, you can share it, you can click on the name of the brand to go see their Facebook page, you can flag it as spam, like all of those interactions count in your click-through rate. So if you are trying to optimize specifically for people to click on a link, you can choose a type of bidding that's called OCPM, optimized CPM, and you can say, I want to specify people who click on a link, and then have it deliver you that. But if you want to see your link click rate, it's not easy to do in Facebook.
Because then why does it give you two different set of data?
At the end of the day, if you have a stock that is needing to go up and you need to charge people on a cost per click basis, what click-through rate do you think is better? I hate to say that, but come on. I mean, like, why else would you choose that? But there are tons of justifiable reasons for that, like, which is, well, if somebody's clicking like, comment, and share, that's creating additional impressions for you, that has value, that's something they should get paid for. It's all very, acceptable. But at the end of the day, click-through rate is something that is a hard metric for you to try and optimize against if you're using the Facebook definition of it. Yes. Well, total clicks is the number that you're seeing, and that clicks on anything. A link click, which is under what they call consumptions, and there's 4 types of consumptions: photo views, video plays, link clicks, and what they call other clicks. All of those count as clicks, and all of them count in your click-through rate, But if you're trying to drive a specific objective of driving somebody outside of Facebook into your landing experience, that is specifically called a link click. Yeah. And that's always going to be lower than your total number of clicks, because the total number of clicks includes a whole bunch of other types of clicks than just the clicks that are on your link. Oh. No, the total clicks is oh. Right. Click on a link is what they would refer to as their link clicks. They never give you the rate for that. You have to calculate link click rate yourself. Yeah, sorry.
All right. Big round of applause for Justin Kistner, guys.